In this lesson, you will learn how to find the intercepts of a line. The first type of intercept that we'll look at is the x-intercept. And the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis. So if we start with line 1 crosses the x-axis at this point, and this x-coordinate is -7. So the ordered pair that represents the x-intercept is -7, 0. For line 2, the x-intercept is here, and the x-coordinate is 2, so the x-intercept is 2, 0. For line 3, the x-intercept is here, that x-coordinate is 9, so the point is 9, 0. For line 4, it touches the x-axis here at -2, so the point is -2, 0. Line 5 is at the origin, so that point is 0, 0. And line 6 does not cross the x-axis because it's a horizontal line, so it doesn't have an x-intercept. And line 7 touches the x-axis here at x equals 8. So its point is 8, 0. So one thing you want to notice about the x-intercept is that every coordinate that's written has a y value that's equal to 0. So when you're finding the x-intercept, y is equal to 0. The next type of intercept that we're going to look at is the y-intercept. So starting with line 1, the y-intercept is where the line touches the y-axis, and if we count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it has a y-coordinate of 5, so the point is 0, 5. For line 2, it touches the y-axis here, and if we count from 0, we're going down 3, so it's -3. So this point is 0, -3. And for line 3, it touches the y-axis here at 9, so 0, 9. And at line 4, 4 touches the y-axis down here at -2. So the point is 0, -2. And for line 5, it touches also at the origin, so 0, 0. And then for line 6 has a y-intercept right here at -7. But when we look for the y-intercept for equation 7, it never touches the y-axis, so this one is none. So one thing you want to notice about the y-intercept is that every point in this column has an x value equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 when you're finding the y-intercept. So the directions are to graph the line using the intercept method. And for number 1, we have -3x plus 4y equals 12. It doesn't matter which intercept you find first. I'll find the x-intercept first, and when you find the x-intercept, you set y equal to 0. So we have -3x plus 4 times 0 equals 12, and we just solve for x. Divide both sides by -3, and we get x equals -4. So make sure you write the point. X is negative 4, so X goes first, and we put 0 in for Y, so our point is negative 4, 0. Next, when we find the y-intercept, now we substitute 0 in for x. So it's negative 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 12. And now we solve for y. And we get y equals 3. And since we substituted 0 in for x, 0 goes first, and then 3 goes second. So we have the point negative 4, 0, which is right here, and 0, 3. We connect the points, and there's your line. Make sure you extend the line past the points and place arrows at both ends. So same for number 2. I'll find the x-intercepts first. So we have negative 2x plus 4 times 0 equals 8, and we solve for x. Divide both sides by negative 2, and we get x equals negative 4, and our point is negative 4, 0. And then for our y-intercept, now we substitute 0 in for x, and we have 4y equals 8. Divide both sides by 4, and we get y equals 2. So our point is 0, 2. Always put the x first, and since 0 was placed in for x, it's 0, 2. So we have negative 4, 0 and 0, 2. Almost the same as the last line. Connect your points, extend it past the 2 points, and put arrows at the end. So for the x-intercept, we have 1/3 x plus 2 times 0 equals negative 1. And since 2 times 0 is 0, we're left with 1/3 x equals negative 1. So to solve for x, you want to multiply both sides by 3 over 1, 1/3's reciprocal. And when you multiply by 3 over 1, the 3's cancel and the 1's cancel, and we're left with x equals negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. So our point is negative 3, 0. For the y-intercept, now we place 0 in for x, and you'll find this one to be a little bit easier because we really don't have to deal with the fraction. 1/3 times 0 is just 0, and we're left with 2y equals negative 1. But now when we divide both sides by 2, negative 1 over 2 is not a whole number, so our intercept is a fraction, 0, negative 1/2. X goes first, and then the y is second. So when we graph negative 3, 0, the x-intercept, it's right about here. And then for 0, negative 1/2, we're just in between 2 points. And then connect your points, and there's your line. So for number 4, starting with the x-intercept, we have 5x minus 3 times 0 equals 0, and we're left with just 5x equals 0. Divide both sides by 5, and we get x equals 0. So on this example, x we saw for is 0, and the y-coordinate we substituted in 0, so it turns out that our x-intercept will be the same as the y-intercept because both points are 0. So you can go ahead and find the y-intercept, but we know we're just going to get 0, 0 anyway. And we get negative 3y equals 0. Divide both sides by negative 3, and we get y equals 0 as expected, and this confirms that 0, 0 is our only point. Now the problem with this one is, how do we know which way to draw our graph? Our intercept is 0, 0, but we don't know the direction. So when this happens, just pick a value for x. I'm going to pick x equals 1. You can pick any number you want. I just try to keep it small. And I substitute 1 in for x. So I have 5 minus 3y equals 0. I subtract 5 from both sides and solve for y. So negative 3y equals negative 5. I divide both sides by negative 3, and I get y is equal to 5 over 3, and 5 over 3 is the same as 1 and 2/3. So as a point, we substituted in x equals 1, and our y came out to be 1 and 2/3. So when we graph this point, at least we know now how to draw the line, whereas before we would have just been guessing. And now we can connect the points to form our line. For number 5, we have 2y equals 8. So when I find the x-intercept, the rule is to substitute 0 in for y. But when I put 0 in for y, I'm left with 0 equals 8, which is not a true statement, and there's no x to solve for, so we have no x-intercept. But to find the y-intercept, how would we find the y-intercept if there's no x to substitute in for? When this happens, all we have to do is solve for y. And we get y equals 4, and since there's no x to substitute in for, it's just 0, 4. So 0, 4 is the only point that we have. But I can actually finish this problem without picking a random point the way I did in number 4, and since this has no x-intercept, it has to be drawn so that it never crosses the x-axis, and that must mean that it's a horizontal line. A very similar example in number 6, when I'm finding the x-intercept, I substitute 0 in for y, but there is no x to substitute in for. So I just solve for x. And when I solve for x, I get x is equal to negative 4/3, and we can also write that as negative 1 and 1/3. And since I didn't have a 0 to substitute in, then our y is automatically 0. When I find my y-intercept, the rule is to substitute 0 in for x, but when I do, I get 0 equals negative 4, which is not a true statement. 0 does not equal negative 4, so that means we have no y-intercept. The only point that we have is negative 1 and 1/3, 0, which is right about here, negative 1 and 1/3 on the x-axis, 0. So if I have to draw a line through this point, with this line not having a y-intercept, it must be a vertical line.